All praise is due to the one of whom we are neglectful, the only true reality that can be known through our own true reality, the one that is veiled by the veils of our own selves. And salutations and greetings to the sign and the reminder of that reality, Muhammad, the chosen one, and upon his purified progeny, the bearers of a knowledge that is difficult to bear. In this talk I will be discussing a particular point on which Imam Khomeni focused and which is still relevant to us today, the issue of knowledge and of knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we know, we are commanded to seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. We are commanded to seek knowledge even as far as China. And Imam Jafar alayhi salam has classified three kinds of people: the ones who know, the ones who are seeking knowledge, and those who have no worth. Islam, therefore, is fundamentally about seeking knowledge and about being people of knowledge. We know too that within the Islamic tradition there emerged and developed many different kinds of knowledge. The acquired sciences through which we learn about Islam intellectually, and the practical sciences through which we purify and change ourselves, through which we soften our hearts and polish our consciousness so that we may be able to perceive reality more deeply and with a greater understanding. We cannot change our state until we change ourselves. And no amount of knowledge of Islamic sciences can assist us if we have what we might call a worldly mentality, a mentality that is closed to the presence of the divine reality and which is attached exclusively to this material world. The way we think determines the way we are. The first thing that Allah created was the aql, as we know from the hadith. But what is the aql? It is not, as is often understood, a rational faculty wherein our mind is divorced from our heart. The aql, rather, is consciousness, and that consciousness is a light by means of which we apprehend the light of the divine. The aql, it could be said, is the heart of the heart. It is something that shines through the veils of our emotions and desires, calming the waters of sorrow, turmoil, and anxiety. And that is why it is said that in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find peace. Allah is remembered by means of the aql, and His presence within the world in which we live is perceived by means of the aql. The most fundamental and essential knowledge, therefore, is this knowledge of the presence of Allah. It is apprehending His light, which is revealed to us in the form of wisdom. Light and wisdom are one and the same, according to the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Ignorance is darkness. So why is it then that Imam Khomeni said knowledge is a great hurdle? Knowledge is a barrier to knowing. Imam Khomeni said that knowledge prevents people from undertaking the Gnostic journey and instead involves them in in intellectual questions and scientific theories. For the holy men, knowledge is the greatest barrier and veil. The more the knowledge, the bigger the hurdle it will prove. Firstly, we are advised by the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family, to seek knowledge. But seeking knowledge is just the beginning of a road of many hidden perils. For even in seeking knowledge of Allah and in gaining knowledge, we can still fail utterly to overcome our self-centered, closed-hearted, worldly mentality. The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family said, "Do not acquire knowledge in order to compete with the scholars, nor argue with the ignorant, nor to gain mastery over gatherings, since whoever does, then the fire, the fire, the fire." With regard to this, Imam Khomeni has said, "Man, being egoistic and self-centered, feels elated by his limited knowledge and thinks that there is nothing beyond what he knows. Only a few persons guided by the help of Allah refrain from such false notions and silly thinking." The numbers of those who embark on seeking knowledge are few. The numbers who do not allow such knowledge to prevent them from attaining knowledge of their own selves is even fewer. The greatest and most dangerous pitfall on the path of seeking knowledge is to become so enamored with the knowledge that one has gained that one forgets one's own soul. We become so intoxicated with the little degree of understanding with which we've been blessed that we forget that we depend upon the source of all knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The knowledge which we have attained, therefore, has become a barrier to attaining further knowledge. We hold on to it as we might any other worldly possession, and we take pride in it as we might any other worldly possession. Fundamentally, we have forgotten the most important knowledge, which cannot be attained without casting off this state of worldly attachment, and which can only be attained through surrender of the self to the One. Thus, Imam Khomeni has said, knowledge, which was expected to be a beacon of light and a guide, has become a hurdle, an obstacle. That is true of all kinds of formal knowledge. Formal knowledge does not allow man to become what he should. It makes him egoistic. Its adverse effect on an untrained mind leads man backward. As knowledge accumulates, its disadvantages and harmful effects grow. In other words, as he says, formal knowledge is a hurdle in the way of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not to say that we should shun formal knowledge. As he says, such formal knowledge has a negative effect upon a mind that is untrained. Of course, we know that formal knowledge does train the mind in certain ways. It trains the intellect to sift information, to assess, to judge, to connect points together and draw conclusions. But this is training at a rationalistic, worldly level. In the sense that Imam Khomeni means then, an untrained mind is a mind that is not trained in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a mind that has not learned to let go of its fascination with the worldly life. It is a mind that has not learned to detach itself from love for itself. It is a mind that is in love with the surface glamour of the world, with worldly position, including that of being a scholar or an alim or even an arif. As Imam Khomeni says, love of the chair and love of the mimbar both show attachment to the world. We could extend this as well to love of the title, Allama, Sheikh, Professor, Doctor. An untrained mind is one that is in love with knowledge, passionate about knowledge, and about attaining it, to the point that it neglects itself and its Lord. Imam Khomeni says, a student possessing only one book may be worldly if he was too attached to it. How many of us would be willing to give up our library collections? It's a test. And so he says, our preoccupation with knowledge should not make us forget Allah. And he warns, our pride on account of our knowledge should not make us self-conceited and away from the source of all perfection. Such pride is common among the scholars and intellectuals. And we know the hadith that says the best people are the scholars and the worst people are the scholars. How much worse it is to neglect to seek knowledge of Allah when the person has excellent knowledge of all sciences than it is to neglect it through a simple limited capacity. For the more knowledge that it has attained, the greater the responsibility and the greater test for the ego. So Imam Khomeni said, if the heart is not purified, the emergence of such a pride is natural. It keeps man away from Allah. What a disaster it would be if someone spent 70 years absorbed in books, attained an international reputation as a scholar, an alim and an arif, taught hundreds of students, published treatises and books, but had no ability to read the heart of the person in front of him, and had no ability to have compassion for a human being of lesser status than him, and neglected his wife and children because he was always too busy with his books and writing papers, and had no empathy for those around him who suffered. In other words, after 70 years, he would die with a heart whose eye is closed. He would die with a heart that is blind. He would die without ever having found the real knowledge. And this is the peril of seeking knowledge on this path. And let us think, this is a reminder for all of us, of those scholars and academics, and those of us who are aspiring to be scholars and academics, who do indeed spend hours at their desks and laptops, absorbed for long periods in the fascinating allure of attaining more knowledge. Yet when it comes to the time for salah, they have to drag themselves away from their desk, and they pray so quickly that they can get back to their desk or laptop again. They are absorbed in texts that talk about Allah and the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim salam, that discuss the authenticity of hadith, that examine the minutiae of Islamic history, yet they forget to have a conversation with the very subject of those texts, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They forget to sit before Him on the prayer mat and reflect on their inner state, which they present before their Lord. Imam Khomeni asks, how is it that the study of the book often absorbs man's entire attention, but the prayer does not? Therefore, when embarking on a life of seeking knowledge, we need to remember at all times, what is the purpose of doing that? Imam Khomeni has said that knowledge is meant to help us to reach our goal, to help us to know our souls in order to purify them so that we can better receive the divine light, which is at one and the same time wisdom and a sign of the presence of Allah. And he says, action, according to Islamic injunctions, is not an end in itself. The real objective is to awaken our conscience so that we may be able to reach the veils of divine light after crossing the veils of darkness. And we know that the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, also taught a dua in which we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us away from the knowledge that does not benefit us. Time is short and we need to be focused in order not to be distracted by collecting useless knowledge. Useless knowledge, or knowledge that inflates the ego of the knower, blocking his or her path to the divine, has an effect upon the inner state, the maqam, in relation to the divine. Imam Khomeni says, any knowledge which does not allow man to achieve the objective for which the prophets have come is darkness and a barrier. There is therefore an esoteric dimension to all knowledge, depending upon the intention with which it is sought and attained. knowledge which is sought and attained without the clear intention of apprehending more deeply the one reality is knowledge that is darkness. It is only knowledge which is sought and attained with the intention of seeking nearness to the one reality that acts as a means, as a bridge to that reality. This knowledge is a means to light, a door to the light, and therefore opens up the light in the life of the seeker. Imam Khomeni says the real existence is that of light only. He reminds us of why the prophets came into this world and why they transmitted the knowledge that they did. All prophets came to pull us out of all kinds of darkness and to lead us to the sole and absolute light, the source of all existence. They all had a specific purpose for coming. Their knowledge had a specific purpose, and they taught it for a specific purpose. And that was for a single purpose only, centered upon the single and one only reality, the source and light of all existence. Their purpose was solely to remind us of the essentiality of this knowledge and to teach us how to attain it. He reminds us that prophetic knowledge is different from the knowledge that comes in the form of sciences, saying that sometimes even scholastic theology becomes a hurdle and a barrier. The method followed by scholastic theology is not that of the prophets and the holy men who never adduced arguments. Of course, they were aware of the arguments, but they did not use them. The task of the prophets was not to teach these sciences, but to transmit light, to show man how he could refine his consciousness, his aql. As Imam Khomeni says, the prophets had come to take this natural being, man, from the natural stage to the high stage of the supernatural, beyond worldly power. He notes something interesting, that the first ayah to be uttered was Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Iqra bi-ismi rabbika al-khalaq, to which he observes from the beginning of starting reading the Quran says how reading should be. It should be in the name of the Lord. When reading started, it started in the name of the Lord. Knowledge in the name of the Lord. Seeing in the name of the Lord. Hearing in the name of the Lord. Speaking in the name of the Lord. The world has been started in the name of the Lord. Now, the issue of the name of the Lord would require another discussion, but as a side point, if we really knew what the name is, its meaning and its dimensions, we would understand better the power of our actions when acting upon it. And in relation to seeking knowledge and having knowledge then, Imam Khomeni advises us to migrate outside of ourselves. As he says, instead of saying, worldly people are those who possess such and such things, we should see how far we are attached to the things that we possess. Seeking knowledge and even gaining knowledge can in no way benefit us or anyone else if it does without the intention of making hijrah from our own selves. And he advises that he who wishes to get out of the dungeon of egoism must strive to emigrate from his present state. This is a warning to those of us who love to seek and to attain knowledge. A warning that without leaving behind all worldly attachments, including attachments to our own selves and the knowledge that we attain, without making hijrah towards Allah, such knowledge will remain a barrier to the knowledge that really matters, and that is knowledge of the truth. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad